Welcome to Step Up to the Sport, a conversation series bringing together the minds of women's baseball and women in baseball. I'm Kate Haines, your host of today's conversation and the archivist for the International Women's Baseball Center. Today, we are joined by Leslie Heaphy and Kat Williams to kick off the 5th annual Women in Baseball Week and to celebrate 1 year of our conversation series, Step Up to the Sport. Leslie is an associate professor of history at Kent State University at Stark, author and editor of 6 books related to the Negro Leagues and women's baseball, primarily through one also deals with the New York Mets. Her love of baseball has also brought her to the board of the IWBC and is vice president of SABR, where she also chairs the Women in Baseball Committee. Kat is a professor of women's sports history at Marshall University, author of the All-American Girls After the AAG PBL, How Playing Pro Ball Shaped Their Lives, and Isabel Lefty Alvarez, The Improbable Life of a Cuban-American Baseball Star. She is a lifelong baseball fan and former shortstop. It is her sincere belief that she accomplished all the former goals because of the latter. Through her teaching, scholarship, and advocacy, she has dedicated many years to the preservation of girls' and women's baseball history. She continues the work as president and founding member of the International Women's Baseball Center. Today, we're going to talk about our last year in review, from our experiences with this series and moving to a virtual space. So welcome, Kat and Leslie.
Thanks,
Hi.
Kate.
It's great to be here again.
I guess I should clarify, welcome back. You both have been here a few times.
Hey, it's been fun.
It has, and it's been a very interesting year.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, kind of to kick things off, what do you think the organization has changed by being able to provide digital content like this throughout the last year and that transition into the virtual space?
What do you think we've changed, or how have we changed?
Both.
Actually, I am a person who likes that sort of interaction with people. So I've been kicking and screaming into the whole virtual world. But what I found is that, for example, last year, and Leslie is the one who can really speak to this, last year when we did the IWBC SABR Women in Baseball Conference, because we had to be virtual, we had, Leslie, wasn't it like
172 people? Yep.
172, and people from all over, because they had this opportunity. So in a sense, it broadens our audience. It broadened the people, not only our audience, but the participants. And then, the other thing is, for me, and this is a more personal thing, for me, I learned, what, I can sit in this chair and be fairly effective in giving talks or teaching classes. And, it's been a learning experience for me personally. But as far as the IWBC, I think one of the things it's done is broaden our reach. And because of that, we've continued to grow and expand and do really great things, even in the midst of a pandemic. So, I mean, that's my take on it. Leslie, you probably.
I would agree. I was going to simply say the thing that we've all learned, and the IWBC is no different, is whether we liked it or not, this virtual world has opened up the accessibility for people. Yeah. And given who we are as an organization, I think that's even more important to a group like us, where we are intentionally wanting to include everybody from everywhere.
Yes.
And
yes.
So the ability to include people in a way that we couldn't before is huge, and obviously taught us a lesson moving forward, which is going to be interesting to see how we all figure that out.
Yeah.
What is the balance moving forward between the in-person and the virtual, knowing that they both bring something to the table, and we can't let either of those go. And so this year's Women in Baseball Conference is going to be our first try at that, because it's going to be a hybrid event. And it's going, so that will be very interesting to see how that's going to work.
Yeah.
But I think it's, the lesson we learned last year and lesson we've learned this whole past year and a half is we don't have a choice. And that's not a bad thing. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a good thing. And it's something that we continue to get better at.
Right.
It's given us access to people to talk to and allow them to tell their stories that we might otherwise not have ever had a chance to talk to.
Yeah.
And that is important. And so all of these things might have been uncomfortable to us at first and might still be a little bit, but I would say in the balance, they're a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I wouldn't have thought that a year and a half ago. And
you guys both mentioned
against that.
Yeah, you guys both mentioned the Women in Baseball Conference. So for our watchers, the Women in Baseball Conference, our third annual one with co-sponsored with Sabre, will be taking place the second weekend of September in Rockford, Illinois, and also in the virtual space. So we'll link it in our episode notes so you guys can check that out.
Right.
Yep. I definitely agree with you guys on kind of the back and forth, because it's definitely been a learning experience for all of us, even those that you guys assume have a little bit better understanding of the virtual space. I can guarantee you I've learned a lot of things too. But Kat kind of talked about this too. So the pandemic's been devastating in so many ways, and we definitely recognize that. But I was wondering if you guys thought that actually hindered our mission, our fight for girls and women in baseball. But Kat actually mentioned that she feels like we've grown a bit, at least as an organization. So can you guys talk to that a bit?
Sure, I can start this. I would say we have grown in one sense, certainly in the sense of being able to provide opportunities for in-person play on the field, things like that. That has been hindered in the sense, but that's been hindered everywhere. So we're unfortunately, but that hasn't stopped us from continuing to look at our broader mission statement, right? Which is about education, preservation, history. It's all of those things. And on those other fronts, we have continued to be able to move forward. And in many ways, the virtual world has allowed us to reach an audience we haven't been able to before, to try things that were new to us, to be able to tell stories that we haven't been able to. And again, but that the Women's Baseball Conference last year was a huge leap forward from our first one. I mean, nobody expects to grow that much from your first to your second conference.
No.
Right.
And we did. And so we wonder what's going to happen this year. but that's a good thing. And that means it gives us the platform to get the messages out that we want to get out. And for us to hear those messages as well from a much broader audience. And so in that sense, we certainly have grown.
Yeah. And I would agree. I mean, I would echo everything Leslie said there. I mean, I think that we, now I'm talking about the IWBC specifically, we were able to expand into places that we wouldn't necessarily have done because we wouldn't have physically gone to those places so quickly. And yet, I will say that, of course, last year we missed baseball, right? I mean, I'm not talking about Major League Baseball. We weren't in Rockford hosting a tournament. So we missed out on some of that. But if you're a kid playing ball, if you're a girl playing baseball, and everybody missed out on that, right? So one of the things you're going to do is reach out to where you can and reach out to who you can reach out to. And so, we were able to grow in a really fundamental way. But we can't pretend that it was all peachy, right? Like, I mean, peachy. Sorry, I didn't really mean that pun, but it was, when I was in Rockford just about a month ago. And speaking of Peachy, I was able to watch 2 games of the Little Peaches, who is a young a girls team. They have 2 teams actually, and they are coached by Bethany Moreland. And I really, it was an amazing experience. I went to the ballpark, and on one field were the little bitty kids, and then on the other field were the only slightly larger kids. And that's what we missed, right? That's what we missed. I missed being able to, like, I'm standing there watching this little girl playing baseball, right? And so we missed that piece of it, but we're back, right? And the Little Peaches are back, and the hundreds of girls that are going to show up at the Baseball for All Girls National Tournament next week and at the Cal Ripken. You know, hundreds of girls are chomping at the bit to get on the field, and so while we may have missed that last year, this is the thing that's important. It didn't die. It didn't wither on the vine. It didn't stall. Instead, it kept growing. And that's an important message.
Yeah, I definitely counting down the days that I get to go back to my first baseball game. It hasn't quite happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, then let's switch a little bit more specifically into that year of us functioning in this virtual space and functioning by creating these conversations with people we may not have had the opportunity to sit down with if it hadn't been for this. You guys have been hosts for 10 out of our 12 episodes. I have hosted the other 2 because I have had the great opportunity to sit down with you guys. So are there any kind of favorite moments or some conversations that really stuck out to you guys over the last year that you might want to talk about a little bit?
Wow. That's a tough one.
I was going to say I liked them all for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Because every person brought a unique story, a unique perspective, and every single person that we talked to displayed a passion and a love for the game, no matter what their connection was. Mm-hmm. And we, you know, and I think about the interviewing authors, player, a museum curator. I mean, and in some ways that was the most unique one, right? Aaron with the Worcester Museum and the exhibit on uniforms and the baseball jersey kind of idea, right? Not something I think in any level of thinking about it that I would have thought we would do, except for in this circumstance. And what a fantastically wonderful opportunity to chat with her and to learn from her about what they were doing at that and what this exhibit was all about. And I'm looking forward to the follow-up conversation we're going to have with the restoration person. Again, another conversation that you don't think about. So in some ways that one sticks out just because it clearly was not something we would have done except for the circumstance, which opened up these doors to say, but look at all the different stories that are out there. And so in some ways, I guess that one probably just because it was somebody so different.
Right. And I think that if we are capable of having that conversation with the conservator, it will definitely bring a very different perspective to us, but one that also may help with some of our collectors because they'll be able to talk about the process of keeping items safe and even at home. So that was definitely a really interesting conversation that I would not have ever thought about.
No, and that's one of the things that's so cool about this. You know, we've been saying for so long, it's not just about girls and women who play. It's you know, that women have coached and umpired and tended the fields, and they've done and so then, you know, curating an exhibit about uniforms. You know, it wasn't necessarily something we would think of. For me, one of the things that stands out, and this is probably not going to be too surprising, is when we had the conversation with the guys from Central America. My last book is about Lefty Alvarez, who's Cuban. And these guys, what they're doing, like, I just, it almost is more than my body can contain, right? Like they are bringing girls baseball to Puerto Rico. I mean, not bringing, because girls and women have been playing there for a long time, but Nicaragua and Venezuela and Dominican Republic. Now, okay, we think, oh yeah, well, we know Latin America, they love their baseball. No, you need to listen to, and Kate will be able to tell us what episode that was, but because I don't remember the date. But you need to listen to these guys. Like, they don't have baseballs. They don't have cleats. They don't have bats. They only have a few gloves. Like, what they're doing is bringing to the forefront this thread, this international gender, class, race, all of it. That's what baseball is. And these guys are bringing young girls to the game. And they're trying to do a tournament, a Caribbean Cup. And it's like, that is the core of what the IWBC is about. And so I'm listening to these guys who, by the way, have, I certainly can't converse with them in Spanish, but they can converse with us in English. And they are asking us, help them, right? Help them bring the equipment, the whatever they need. And to me, I do know it's personal for me, in that I have a passion for young girls and women who are playing baseball in Latin America. But at the same time, it is the core of who the IWBC is. We are supportive of bringing the game to everyone. And so that would probably be my favorite, although, they're all pretty fantastic. And by the way, I'll just add this as the last thing, and I'll shut up. Maybe one of the favorites is the very first one. Not because Leslie and I were on it, but because you, Kate, you brought us here, and you set this up. You are responsible for getting this on the air, and that is a pretty cool thing for me to watch.
Well, and I was going to say, Kat, it has to be kind of cool to have the opportunity to talk to more than one of your former students as well. I mean, that's right. That's kind of a cool thing too. And so Kate, of course, being one of them, and then Rachel Folden, who you talked to as well.
Right.
I mean, those are the kinds of opportunities that as a teacher have to mean a lot.
Yeah, it does. And Rachel Folden, I mean, what can you say, right? Like, she being hired by the Chicago Cubs meant that I had to go buy a Chicago Cubs shirt. And so, I mean, truly. Yes, and that is a big part of it. And Leslie, you understand this, as do a lot of our readers, a lot of our listeners who are educators, so yeah, it's all pretty cool.
You guys keep saying nice things about me. You're gonna make me cry on air.
Yeah, I've made you cry before.
Probably not for the same reasons, though.
Exactly. No, that chapter of the thesis is not right. Go back and do it again.
I heard that a lot my final year with you, Kat. But the Latin American organizers, I do believe, was our April episode. We will link that in our episode notes, along with the Rachel Folden episode. Rachel Folden is a hitting coach for the Cubs minor leagues, I believe the rookie league, and she is out in Arizona right now, putting her feet on the ground, getting those boys ready to play up.
Yep.
And is a former student of Cats at Marshall University and a former softball player there too. So, but yes,
and a pretty amazing human being.
It definitely was. I am also super like, I can't even wrap my head around that I've been producing this series for the last year, and some of the other opportunities that you guys have nudged me a little bit further with. You know, I will be the first to tell you I'm not always comfortable in the virtual space. We've kind of been forced there, but you guys came to me and a couple of our other committee members, and gave us an idea. And I think that most of us have the passion behind why we're with the IWBC to be able to pull that together. And I'm really glad that it has come out the way that we have, to sit down with these authors and a documentary filmmaker and writers that just get to share their passion with us in a space that I don't think often gets given to them, because so often girls and women's baseball organizations focus so much on the players. And I think that is a really important distinction that we make, especially in some of the initiatives that we go, is we just want to hear from everybody. You like women's baseball?
That's right.
Talk to us.
That's right.
Show us that you're not alone.
Yep.
I'm a librarian in Michigan. You might be a filmmaker in Alaska. I just want to know that you're out there, that we're together, and we don't necessarily have to be players to be part of that community. And I think that this conversation series has really helped shape that conversation as well.
It really has. And thank you for your role in that.
Now 2020 was a time that we spent celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. And we really wanted to focus on that when we began our conversation series, to kind of help celebrate in a place where we ended up losing a lot of the things that we had planned in the physical space. Do you think we were capable of celebrating that in a justified way in our virtual space when we couldn't do it physically?
Leslie?
Absolutely, because we didn't let it go. And we didn't say, oh, we'll just wait and we'll pick this up next year. It deserved to be celebrated. An important milestone and a story that in some ways is even less well known than others, and certainly hasn't been celebrated in the ways that it should. And so the opportunities that we had between some of our authors that we brought on and our documentary filmmaker being our keynote speaker at our conference last year, that was the theme of our conference. It gave us a chance. And if people haven't seen it and they go and look at the recordings from our conference last year, they will hear some really cool presentations. But the highlight for me was the video celebration that we did, with lots and lots of tributes from various individuals, including family members of some of the former Negro League players, who joined with us, along with Bob Kendrick from the Negro Leagues Museum and others, to be able to have a chance to celebrate and say, your story is important, and we want to do our part in making people more aware. And so I think we did as well as we could do and the most important thing is we did it. We didn't let it go. We didn't say, no, we're going to wait. We found a way to appropriately celebrate.
Right. Yeah.
And for anybody interested in what some of those episodes may have looked like, not only does our YouTube channel have a playlist, but we are actually going to be releasing some of those more on our social platforms during our virtual race, which we'll already be in the process when you guys get this, but a mile in her spikes, we are also going to be launching some of those Negro League celebration episodes during that week. Sabrina Brinson, Lauren Meyer,
Andrew Williams,
Taylor, Angie Williams, and we will make sure that we link all of those into our episode notes as well.
Good.
They are some great watches.
Good. You know, I just want to add, and I can't add anything to Leslie when it comes to the Negro Leagues, the history of the Negro Leagues, or women in the Negro Leagues, because she is one of the foremost authorities on the subject, and we are very, very lucky to have her on our board and working with us. But from a totally different sort of perspective, and this may be sort of out of context in a way that Kate, you may decide to cut, but I want to say this. Last night I watched the ESPYs, or part of it, and I'm a big college basketball fan. And when the UConn player Paige, and her name has escaped me, she accepted an award. And what she said, though, was that we have, and she is white, and she said, we've got to use this opportunity to celebrate Black women. We've got to use this opportunity to celebrate the fact that Black women are, this is, you know, I'm putting words in her mouth, but the gist of it is that, you know, she is on that stage because of her teammates, and many of them are Black women. And we were able to, on a tiny, tiny little scale last year, we were able to celebrate Black women in the game of baseball. And it was not enough. It was, you know, completely inadequate. But as a white woman, and as a woman who believes that access to sport is as important for some young women as access to air, and in this time of Black Lives Matter, and in this time of, you know, we're on the heels of the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues, and this, what this means in this moment, what Leslie and that committee and others have been able to do last year, particularly in the midst of a pandemic, we brought that celebration to the forefront. And it is really, it is important that we've done that. And I commend them, and I commend you, Leslie. And it is my hope that the IWBC never loses that dedication to whether it's Black or brown women or whatever it is. Diversity is the key. And in this moment, and when I watched, did you look up the young woman's name?
It's Beckers.
Beckers, yes. When I watched Paige Beckers say those things, I could feel myself, you know, it's like, yes, yes. And you know, this is an important moment. So anyway, I just want to say that.
And Paige Beckers actually won the ESPY for Best Female College Athlete, and we will link her speech into our episode notes, so anybody that did not get a chance to see it can.
Pretty amazing basketball player. And I apologize, Paige, for not remembering your last name.
I really wanted to say Beckett, and I felt like that wasn't right.
Well, that's exactly what I was like, Beckett, Mueller, what do we?
Yeah. All right, well then, to change it a little bit. So that was the first 6 months of our podcast. But 2021 for the IWBC has a focus on the international game. And I know that we have tried our best to continuing to celebrate diversity across, some of our celebrations of the Negro Leagues have also continued into 2021. But one of the foci that the committee for the podcast in this conversation series has tried to focus on is that international game. Now, that becomes a little bit more difficult. I don't know if any of our listeners have ever tried to schedule international Zoom calls or anything. It is not a simple task to do. But do you think that the content that we've been creating, not just the podcast either, has helped to reflect that and to kind of continue to remind people that the I in IWBC stands for international, and we stand with the international women's game?
Go ahead, Leslie. You've been working with a lot of international folks.
And I sort of, to echo what Kat just said on our previous, as about this much, right? In the sense that we know it's that we need to, and we know that it is important, and we recognize and we look for opportunities, and we want to support as much as we possibly can, because the whole idea is that is who we are, right? But as you pointed out, Kate, we all recognize when you are in those different spaces with hours, 12 hours difference, 13 hours difference.
Yeah, right.
Even the virtual space doesn't necessarily help. And so finding other ways to interact with those communities from everywhere, from Japan to Korea to Canada to the UK, all of Latin America, et cetera. And so what I'm excited about is I think that we have found some ways to really improve those connections and see more of this as we move forward. And that's what we want to do. It's never a one and done kind of idea. And so the focus of this year's conference in September, of course, is the international game. And so gearing and working towards that idea, I think, is a further step in the right direction. But it's something that continues to and requires a great deal of work to be able to make it, to be able to bring the communities together. And without being able to bring the communities together, it's hard sometimes to know what's happening and how we can support one another. And that's really one of the biggest keys, is how do we support? I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Kat, with the Latin America. How do we support, and not just us, but the baseball community in its broadest sense? How do we support one another? And our organization can and should, and we are working in that, right, to serve as sort of the linchpin for all of them, to give them a place where we can connect people and say, hey, yeah, we know what you're doing. Do you guys know what? And so being able to do more of that and build off the foundation we have set, I think is exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think Kat made a very valid point when she was kind of talking about the Latin American organizers as well, is we also, unfortunately, hit language barriers too.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So, when we have international colleagues that can communicate with us, it's great, but I also think that sometimes we lose opportunities because, I don't speak anything other than English, unfortunately. And I definitely don't speak anything well enough to have conversations in another language, which also limits who we can host in a virtual space as well.
Well, and yes, and I am ashamed to say that I don't speak another language, and it's one of my greatest, regrets that I don't. But I will point out that a lot of people who are working in the international women's baseball world community, they are far better and stronger than I am. Last year on the and a number of different times since then, Doris Hocking from the UK, who is like responsible for UK women's baseball, she was, and that is like a 6-hour difference.
Mhm.
She was on every session of our conference last year, and then even stayed on as at the end when we were all talking, and her dedication, and I'm using her as an example here. Believe me, she is not the only one, but her dedication to this is just, it's immeasurable. And so we're fortunate. I feel like I am fortunate. I will speak for myself that a number of those people who are working within the world of women's baseball are willing to, okay, look, you guys are in the US and it may be 3:00 in the morning, but I'm going to stay up and I'm going to have these conversations with you because it matters that much. And so it is hard. It is a challenge. And yet this is the kind of thing that is the core of this larger women's baseball community. Now, Australia may be a different kind of situation, but even those folks, they're like, Leslie, I think last year, wasn't it somebody from Australia is like, well, it's going to be in the middle of the night, but
She was going, except for her health issue that came up, she was going to present.
Exactly.
She's actually turned in a proposal for this year. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's
just got it today. So
yeah.
Well, and
excellent.
that comes to that kind of, scheduling becomes an issue. So we've got Doris Hawking in the UK, of course, and there have definitely just been a couple of other things that have made it difficult for us to sit down with her. One of these days it will happen.
Yes.
But we've even been in conversation with Amy McCann in Australia as well. She hosts Inside Pitch. She wants us to be on her podcast. Hopefully, eventually, she'll be on our conversation series as well. And what makes that virtual interaction so great is, I'm interacting with people I would have never thought that I would have, and even if it's just through email, because that's the only time that we can really communicate, because Australia is 12 hours ahead of us, or whatnot. It has really and creating the virtual content that we have has also helped that, because it's recorded, it is posted, it is available.
Well, and it continues to bring us more. I am a member of the it's Baseball United Foundation, and it's Irish baseball, and so it's baseball is not huge in Ireland, but they have a national team. They have leagues, and so I communicate back and forth with these guys, and they, they're constantly sending me, or not just me, but I'm on a mailing list where I get this information about this team or whatever, and every response I have is, "Where are the women? Do you have any girls playing? Where are the women?" And so this has been going on for 2 years, and finally, John Fitzgerald says, he emailed me and he said, "When you have time, let's have a phone conversation about women's baseball." And I'm like, okay.
You gotta wear them down eventually.
Glad you thought of that, John. And so, but the thing is, it's because of the other connections that I can more comfortably say to him, look, here are all these countries. Leslie and I were making a list the other day of the international, for us, international, of the countries that have women's baseball that we know of. Right. Where are we, Leslie? Is it almost 30?
It was 28.
Like, and I'm Irish. So I'm looking at this guy going, where the hell are you, dude? And so it's this way that it feeds on itself,
Well, and you even look at places where they can't consistently keep men's teams. The Czech Republic fielded a women's team for the European Championship a couple of years ago. The Czech Republic can't keep a men's team together long enough to do international play.
And that's there are bigger issues, right? Well, we know that,
but they're trying. and they recognize how important it is.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
So even to be able to see that type of thing, you have a country that can't necessarily support men's baseball, but they're even trying
Right.
with women's
Right.
But
baseball.
Ireland does.
Yeah.
And they have girls softball. And if you have girls softball, you can have girls baseball. And so
you're gonna wear them down, Kat. It's all good.
hey, I'm on it. I'm on it. And I'm like, I have this vision, right? They're gonna have the first girls baseball league in Ireland, and it's gonna be named after my mother. So,
Kat's next sabbatical for Marshall is going to be organizing women's baseball in Ireland.
Hey, you know what? If they want to bring me to Ireland, you better believe it. You better believe it.
And I'll just hop across the border and go into Scotland and do the same thing.
There you go.
There you go. Hey, you know what? And we can meet someplace in the north.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Doris.
With Doris. There you
With
go.
Doris. There you go.
Have a good pint with Doris.
I would like nothing more than to sit down and have a pint with Doris Hawking. Can I just say that?
Yep. Agreed.
We've now talked about Doris enough that I'm just going to have to tag her every time we post.
I think you're going to have to. Yeah. She no doubt knows that we are big fans of hers. So.
Well, I have one final question from me, and we've got a couple social media questions. And we've definitely been talking about this the entire time. But what do you think are some of the biggest lessons that we've learned in the last year, especially in the virtual space?
Be open to new experiences.
Yeah,
you never know where they're going to take you. And if I have learned nothing else,
that's right.
To say, yes, let's give it a try. I don't know where it's going to go, but I mean, this whole, and
well, also
so
trying not to overwhelm your volunteers.
Yes. Well, that's true too. But being open to new experiences has truly been a blessing in all of this for us. But I also think, I mean, just learning new stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's the technology and how all this works, or more importantly, learning because we've encountered new people. And so the amount of learning that's gone on my part from every guest that we've talked to, the books I've read as a result of listening to them, and the connections that we have made that continue to grow. And so recognizing that the importance of community and how we build community. And I think the pandemic really reinforced the necessity to stay connected to community.
Yes.
In whatever ways we could and can, and that we don't want to lose that moving forward. That we need to continue to remember how important that is. Yeah,
that's perfectly said, Leslie. I was thinking about how, we went several months into the pandemic and then, more and more meetings needed to happen and things like that. And IWBC kind of shifted to doing Zoom meetings. And then Leslie and I last year, there was a period there where we were on a Zoom meeting together about 5 nights out of 7. And that was leading up to the conference mostly. But then once that was over, and then we would go for a long time, and I'm like, dang, I miss seeing Leslie. And so and that is connected to exactly what Leslie's talking about, and Kate, this, we talk about our baseball family, right? We talk about, and we mean that in every sense of that word. And so we often, before COVID, we often didn't even see one another. Like we'd text or we'd email or we'd be on the phone or whatever. But the bonus of this is that we actually get to see the faces of people. And so I feel even more connected in a sense to my community, to my baseball family. And so there is nothing, I don't even care what the meeting's about, right? But there is nothing that I like more than, or honestly need more than being able to, oh, we have a meeting tonight and I'm going to, and Leslie and I are almost always on the same meeting. So, I'm going to get to see Leslie tonight, and it's, so it's about learning those new things, but it's about, oh my God, this is so awesome. I get to see these people who are all over the country.
Which is what we get to continue. And so there's one of the lessons.
Yeah.
So for example, with our board meetings, I don't think anybody has any plan to go back to being on the phone.
No.
It's such a different experience to be able,
No.
and we've talked about, we need to get Shirley to be able to be on the, we could see Shirley.
I know.
I mean,
Guys
and
just
it's
need
become
to
more,
send me
it's
out to
become more apparent.
California. Just pay for me to move out there. I will be Shirley and Mabel's tech person.
Because it's become more apparent when we can see everybody else, how much we want to see Cheryl.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it really is. I mean, I can't imagine, what this would have been like without Zoom.
Right.
Or any other.
Or whatever platform,
just be Zoom. Yeah. I mean, and I taught my classes virtually. I taught my classes sitting in this chair, and that's hard for me. That's not the way I like to teach, but what it also did, though, was make me more comfortable and more open with these kinds of interactions. And we're not going back from this, right? We're not gonna go back to where we're on the phone with people. I mean, I don't mean ever, but I mean for meetings, we're just not gonna do that, right?
Yep.
And so I feel very grateful.
Yes,
we are here in this moment. We weren't part of the 1918 pandemic where we didn't have Zoom. And I am in no way, of course, making light of the seriousness of COVID. And if this is inappropriate, cut it, but get your damn vaccine, people. But the thing is, this is, we learn from those kinds of difficulties, and here we are, right? And women's baseball didn't stop growing. I heard rumor that women's girls nationals, baseball for all nationals, was going to have over 500 girls there this year. 500 girls.
Yep.
I mean, that's
and they are from all over. I mean, they are literally from all over.
And that is baseball for all. That is Justine Siegel. That is the core of what this is about. And the pandemic did not slow it down. This is a movement. This is a movement forward. And it's pretty cool.
Yep.
And for any of you guys that do not know, when Kat teaches, she walks about a mile a class. She paces back and forth. So I can only imagine what watching her try to lecture in her chair is like.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I'm just like that.
But
I used to figure out how much I walked during class, and I was shocked the first time. I was like,
my steps, man, I don't get my steps. I sit here on my butt in my chair. It's really unfortunate, but
well, see, I use mine to travel all over the place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So nobody knows where I'm sitting.
That's right. Yeah.
But to kind of talk more on that community aspect, I'll be the first one to uphold community, especially the baseball community. It's what I talked about in our conference last year, in really creating a community archive for the IWBC, even though we do have a professional archivist,
Who is that, Kate?
Who
is that?
Some former Marshall student.
Who is our professional archivist?
That would be me.
That would be you. That's right.
But I'm a huge advocate for community archives. An organization like the International Women's Baseball Center should be archived by the community and for the community. We just have a professional archivist to help control those collections, to help disseminate them.
Right.
Hopefully I'll be talking about it again in our next conference. I've put in my proposal. But we also just recently,
I don't know.
Who knows who's making that decision?
Yeah, right.
It's not me.
No idea.
But we also just launched a blog post on this, and I'll link it in our episode notes as well, that talks about those types of collections and the digitization process that we actually had to put on a back burner to do these types of conversations, but we've finally gotten some things together. We have access to all of our finding aids for our collections, which will soon be housed in Rockford, at our Rockford University office, which you guys would know about if you have seen our last newsletter, I believe it was.
Yep.
But it's really focused on that, and this space has allowed us to continue to grow that community, to continue to show that it's not just girls and women playing baseball. It's the men in their lives that are helping to change culture and organize in Latin America. It's the Black women that are bringing their culture to remind people that the Negro Leagues existed and they were important, and the desegregation of Major League Baseball didn't start and end with Jackie Robinson. And if you guys don't believe that, read Kia Taylor's work. It's amazing. It pulls that apart. It's relifting great women that defied the odds, knowing Effa Manley's story, knowing that women have been in the game since the beginning of the game, and that when we come together as a community, we have the resources and we have the ability to show everybody else that that's what's going on. And it's because of our baseball family.
Does it get any better than
I was gonna
that,
say,
Leslie?
preach it, Kate. That was awesome, Kate.
I've been thinking about baseball recently, guys. To not think about some other stuff, but it's okay because baseball makes everything better. But we do have a couple of social media questions,
Sure.
a little bit more specifically about the broadness and the ability that the IWBC has, even beyond the virtual space, even though that's what we've really been talking about tonight. So in what ways can the IWBC support those in the baseball community? And how can the community in turn support the IWBC?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to answer that, right? How can the IWBC support those in the baseball community? There are about 1 million different ways. So I'm not going to be able to get into all of them.
Right.
Trust me, you don't want me to. But I will say that we support, we just had this whole conversation about it's not just about the players, right? But we do support in both financially and then emotionally and all kinds of ways. We do support young women and girls who want to play and want to put a team together and want to travel to nationals or whatever it is. I mean, we do that support, that literal support, the best we can. I mean, we are a nonprofit. We do not have unlimited funds, but we do the best we can with that because we believe that girls and women should have every opportunity to play the game. And so there's that, but we also support the baseball community. And again, the baseball community in this context is girls and women in baseball. We also support them by, just the preservation of their history, but also by bringing that history out of the dusty corners and showing those young girls that, you know what, you're not the first one to do this. You're not by yourself. And so, we are about taking historical knowledge and turning it into action. And so that does a lot of different things. So we support the baseball community in 1 million different ways. And so there are some of them that are very tangible. Yes, we're gonna donate a little bit of money to help you, whatever. But the way that the baseball community can support us is, become a member of the IWBC. It's an incredibly cheap thing to do. Become a member of the IWBC. Follow us on social media. Participate in things like our event, our virtual 5K, walk a mile in her spikes. That's $20. Participate in those kinds of things. And then when we call on you to say, hey, answer some questions for us, tell us your story, tell us, let us include you, do that. Yeah, we want somebody from, some major corporation to write us a big check, right? But it's about all of those kids. It's about their parents and their coaches and all of that becoming part of this very grassroots fundamental movement. And so supporting us can be, if you can't afford to support us financially, share a story on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, just keep the IWBC out there. But know that we don't even know yet how many ways we can or will support the women's baseball community. I mean, truly.
And when Kat mentioned, us asking a couple of questions, we're actually launching this week for Women in Baseball Week our new Meet Our Community initiative, which we'll link the directions to, and it's to help you guys realize that you're not alone, that people in the baseball community come from all walks of life and do all sorts of things in the baseball community to help things like the IWBC function, like Baseball for All, be able to host tournaments, and even just Perry Barber sitting down and teach you how to umpire.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out.
Yeah, and I would just say, when people think, often when you hear that question about support, right, everyone's mind immediately goes to money. And yes, everyone always, there's not an organization that doesn't need money, right? So
Right.
that's a given, but it's so much more than that. And so to Kat's point, the idea of how we support and how we can be supported, I think the biggest thing is to say, we don't know, and we need your help, and we expect your help. We want you to prod us. We want you to tell us what we're missing, what we need to be aware of. We're a small group and we need the community. The community is what, and so if we want to truly live up to our name and our mission, International Women's Baseball Center, we can't do that alone. We have to have everyone's support, and we then have to turn around and take what we learn and share it with and that's, I think, the most fundamental way that we can support the largest baseball community is by sharing what we know and what we learn and connecting people and becoming that centerpiece for making sure that people who have a story to tell have somewhere to tell it. Somebody that's looking for somebody else to connect to, they know where to come to find those, and that's who we can be, but not without everybody's help. And so everybody can help in the simplest ways. Post a story, repost a story, let somebody know. You hear about something, don't assume we know. Let us know. Send us a question. Ask us why we're doing something. Ask us why we're not doing something.
Right.
These are the kinds of things that we have to rely on the community to help the community, however you define that community for yourself, to help that community grow. Whether that community is in the United States, or it's in Russia, or it's in Croatia, or it's in Ghana, Venezuela, Vietnam, it doesn't matter. The community is community, and it's your community, it's our community. And that's the key, is we all have to help one another. Yep,
that's exactly right. We are, we have said for a long time, I mean, since the beginning, we're not about making Major League Baseball players. We're about making Major League people. And that's what this community is. I think community sometimes, or family, those are words that people put out there, like, oh, we're family, or this is like a family, or what. And I'm not making light of that, but um, we could probably post stories, even if there were 5 minutes apiece, from girls and women, uh, talking about the importance of that baseball family. And we could back to back have stories for months. Um, and it is the thing that pulls you up. It is the thread. And so that's the kind of support, right? Like, I would love it if we were multimillionaires and we could support every girls team in the world, and we would do that, but we can't. But we can listen, and we can give advice, and we can be here, and we are.
All right, and our final question for this evening. Women's baseball is growing around the world. Is there any outreach to connect those teams or provide competitive opportunities beyond the World Cup, which is only every 2 years?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
some of those countries certainly have their own, but there are efforts, like Kat mentioned already. Some of them are just simply getting underway, what we see in the Caribbean. But we know that the Pan Am Games have been held, and they've had a women's connection. So those kinds of efforts have been out there. The last year in 2019, we saw the European Women's Championship for the first time. So they're with, and more of those opportunities are going to surface as more women's teams get supported in various parts of the world. The more women that are playing, the more these opportunities are going to grow, because we see it individually in each country. And then, we will see the same thing start, and we've already started to see it in those examples and others. But that's the key, is seeing it grow within each country in terms of numbers, because then there's a desire to have those opportunities, right? And opportunities grow from those numbers.
And being able to connect those teams is also extremely important. We at the IWBC attempt to keep a resource page of active teams. Of course, we're not always great at keeping that up to date, but there is an ability for any listener that, if you come across our resource pages, which are linked in the blog posts that are going to be linked in the episode notes, that you can go, hey, this isn't correct information anymore. This is where you can actually find them. And our hope is that those types of resource pages will help connect not only teams, but players and fans as well.
Yeah. And hey, let's have an international tournament at Buyer Stadium in Rockford, Illinois.
That'd be awesome. And not outside the realm of possibility in the.
No, not at all. If we can just get COVID in the rear view, not outside at all.
Just another reason for you to get vaccinated.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, before we turn in for the evening, is there anything else you guys want to talk about after our year with Step Up to the Sport, our year in the virtual space, and our first year getting back to physical baseball?
It's been as always, it's been an exciting year, and I'm looking forward to where we go next.
Yeah, me too. And whether we're talking virtually or in person, some pretty cool stuff happening, and the future is bright.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for stopping by and talking to me this evening.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
You can keep up with the IWBC at IWBC for me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you're interested in becoming a member or are interested in making a donation to support our continued work, please visit our website.